All right, it's that time. It's noonish here in Scotts Valley. And
Yes, sorry about that.
It's time for the very best of what's new in Rad Studio XE3 from a C++ perspective with David I.
I'm going to spend a few minutes because some people were asking about C++ examples using things like FireMonkey, Metropolis, and so on. In any case, this is live. It's David I here in the studio. So I'm going to go through building some different examples and some of the features in XE3 as it relates to C++ Builder XE3. I'm going to defer some of the 64-bit demos to the sessions on Wednesday where the R&D members will be here talking about migrating projects from 32 to 64-bit, the C++ 11 standard, boost, all of those kind of questions, and focus these things on what we can do. So I'm going to do no slides, just demos, and occasionally go back to the doc wiki, which is at docwiki.embarcadero.com, and then I clicked on C++ Builder and then the What's New in C++ Builder. So the What's New does have a section at the top, What's New in C++ Builder 64-bit, but then also things that are new in the XE release in general. Metropolis UI support in Delphi and C++, for VCL and FireMonkey, migrating projects if you want to do that, and user interface. We'll take a look at that. We'll spend a bunch of time on FireMonkey 2 and what you can do in C++, which is everything that Darren also showed for Delphi in the previous two sessions, but and answered questions. We'll show that in C++. Talk about the devices and the device manager and the sensor management that's available both in some components and in lower-level framework. And we'll look at some examples there. And then touch and gestures and actions that are used in FireMonkey and C++. And anything else that you then ask questions for here in the next 30 minutes or so. All right, and with that, I'll just switch to the IDE. Let's see. First, I have to get over my VM. So what I'm running on is I've got two computers here. I've got a MacBook Pro, and in my MacBook Pro, I'm running OS X Lion, and I'm running VMware Fusion for the Mac, and then I'm running Windows 7 64-bit on as a guest operating system. So that's where the IDE lives. It lives in that world. And then over on Macintosh side, I will start up the Platform Assistant Server, which is right here. And the Platform Assistant Server allows the Windows IDE to talk to the Macintosh side to facilitate deploying applications and debugging applications that you build in C++ Builder for the Macintosh. So I need to say that it's okay that the Platform Assistant Server wants to access some APIs on the Macintosh side. And then we'll switch back to the IDE. So it's just sitting there waiting for me to do things. And we can create applications, and there's some project menus called deploy is one of those when we have a Macintosh target. So we'll take a look at some of that and what we have to do here in a moment. And we've covered a lot of this in FireMonkey 1 with XE2, and those videos are available. So first, let's say File New, just a VCL C++ Builder application. We'll put a button down. And that's, simple VCL application for Windows. Now, if I want this to have the Metropolis UI style or the Windows 8 style, and I've got an existing VCL application, I can convert it by just right mouse clicking inside of my form, VCL form, and there's a menu item that has appeared in XE3 called Convert to Metropolis UI. And it warns you and says, hey, by the way, this can't be undone because it's going to change your form file. And then you can choose a style that you want. So here's a Windows, like the green style, for example. And we'll make that our default style. Here's the green style. You'll see any available styles, and you can select multiple ones and then choose between them. And I'll say OK. And now my application, the button is a little bigger. It uses the Sego font, this S-E-G-O-E. LUE font, which is the default font for Windows. And then if I run this application, compile it and run the C++ application, I'll have a simple Metropolis looking C++ example with all the right styles and colors available. Of course, the first time that that I build it, it's going to build the precompiled header file, and it's going to compile the project, and then subsequent builds will be better. So here's now the green style, and I've got a button that I can click on, and I can hit Alt F4 to quit. So again, Windows 8 style or Metropolis UI style are full screen applications. And we could add a toolbar if we want, and other things, but it'll convert all of the application to have that look. Now, same thing goes for FireMonkey application. So if I say File, New FireMonkey Desktop Application C++ Builder, and I can choose High Definition 2D or 3D as my default project type and form type. So now I've got a FireMonkey application, and I can put a button on it. And why not put an edit box, for example, and some other things. I'm using ID Insight, so I'm hitting F6, or you could hold down the Control period key. So here is an edit box and a button, and let's put a list box. This is sort of the classic first application that we usually build in demos. Over, and the list box is here, and then we'll give that a text property, and add and write an event handler for it by double-clicking, and say list box 1, it's items. We're going to add edit 1, the text property of edit 1. Right? Pretty straightforward. So that's a FireMonkey C++ example, right? It runs, and we can style it and do things to it. So here, if I put things into the edit box, then they get a list box. Right? We can convert this again to Metropolis UI if you want to. Just right mouse click and say convert to Metropolis UI. And again, it says, are you sure you want to proceed with the form conversion? Changes cannot be undone. I'll say yes. Now it comes up with a default style, which is the dark style or the black style. And we can go into the style system, and we can make changes. Just bring up edit and create a custom style and save it. And we have here all of the different items that can appear in our application, and we can change the style of any one of those and create a new style. You also can style the frame and border and caption and buttons, the non-client areas like the close button. You can make that right now. It's just a button, but it could have a different look and feel. And so all of those things, the title caption, all of that can be, so here's the title bar and so on. You can control title bar style and toolbars and so on. So you can control everything in the user interface using bitmap styles. So let's just run this example now. And it has that Metropolis style. It's changed the font. This is 42, and it adds itself and hello world. And again, when we're done, we can just close the application. So if you have an existing FireMonkey C++ builder, FireMonkey 1, or even FireMonkey 2, and you want to have a version of that project that has the Windows 8 style, maybe you have some customers or users that have upgraded to Windows 8, you can take that application. Now remember, it's going to modify the form file, so you'll want to clone the project directory and create a second project that you convert from. And then you can do a build of a traditional FireMonkey style, a Windows look file or a Macintosh look file. And you can also have a Windows 8 style. And all it is setting the style. So you do that using the style book, and then you can go in and work with the style book and all the style settings. But each component can have a style. So here's like the button style, but maybe you want some other style. The object inspector now, when you do the style lookup, will give you a view of the different choices. So here's all the different button styles that are defined: document buttons, ellipse buttons, edit buttons, and so on. So all of this is available, and you can see them in the object inspector, so you can just choose one that you like versus the standard one. So maybe I want a different kind of button. like an apply button, something like that. So now it's an apply button. So apply would, of course, still do the same thing underneath. It still goes to the event handler. So if I want that Windows 8 style, then maybe the apply button would be a better look than the text that says add or add me, something like that. So all that is available as part of the Metropolis UI. Now, notice I'm not going to spend any time on this right now, but there's a new property for the stylebook, and it's called the high-res stylebook. And what the high-res stylebook property is used for is that you can, if you're on a high-resolution display, for example, if you're on a Macintosh Retina display, and you want to have support for Macintoshes that have the traditional display resolution, then you would set the stylebook style that you want. And we also then have support for high-res styles, high-res bitmap styles for Macintosh Retina display. And so the way you could support the Retina is to provide a second stylebook, so we could add a stylebook. And we could load into this stylebook the Retina display style setting. And one of the bonus pack items, there's a Jet style, and it also has a Jet 2 style, and the Jet 2 style is the Macintosh Retina display style. And so all you need to do is you have your standard starting style book, and then the secondary style book, you just go into Retina, into the high-res style book, and set the secondary style. And so then on a Macintosh, if it's running on a traditional resolution display, it'll use the first style. And if it sees that it's running on the Macintosh Retina display, it'll look to the property that has the high-res style, if it has one. And if it does, it'll use that style. And so that's how we support standard resolution and high-res styles on a Macintosh. Just give it two style books and set the right style. So that new property, high-res style book, is connected to the first style book. They're chained together by the property. Okay. Now for anchors, and Darren, I think, did some of this, but I just want to go back and revisit it for a moment. Let's put anchors. I think he was doing it in Delphi, but we'll do it in C++. One other thing to notice that's new is the precompiled header file gets generated for every project, and that works whether it's in 32-bit or 64-bit. So that's different from the past. But it's a very small difference, especially as it relates just to 32. All right, so let's put a button down, and let's put it down here in the corner, and let's set its anchor points to be bottom and right. Right, and that way when we resize, then the button will stay anchored in the right spot. Let's put a layout, and let's put a button in this layout. And again, in FireMonkey, you can have components that contain other components. So we can put a button here, and we can anchor that button to the bottom and right of the layout. That way, when we change the layout, it's anchored in the proper place. But notice when you have layouts and you might have something anchored on the form, that you should take care, because you could run into a situation where, because of anchoring, the button that's anchored to the form might disappear because there's something else that's not anchored on the form. So what we would do in that case is better would be to anchor the bottom and right of the layout. That way, as I move things, then the layout is anchored and the button is anchored so they don't collide with each other. Or just put all your components inside layouts as you lay them out over your application. And underneath, again, there's nothing going on yet there, C++ lamp, but it's there to show you can do that. There's two additional layouts that are available for C++ and XE3 in FireMonkey. There's the T-flow layout. And the flow layout, let's put that up here, and let's put some components in it. We'll put a couple buttons, and maybe another button, and an edit box, and a list box, and another button. Yep. But that's in the list box. Let's move it into the flow layout. And then the flow happens based on the size of the flow layout itself. There's a couple choices. There's many properties, but there's three that I usually look at. One is the flow direction, and that choice is either left to right or right to left. So now the buttons are flowing from right to left. So 3 is on the right, 4, 5, 6, and so on. And then I did the edit box, list box, and that. Let's put them back there, right to left, and there they are. There's two other that you might care about, and there's the horizontal gap, so you can set that to, oh, here I didn't want to hit compile, but there's nothing to compile. Here we go. Let's go and set the horizontal gap to 4. And now notice there's a little horizontal gap between components in the flow layout. And also there's a vertical gap, so let's set that to 4. And now there's a little bit of separation between the different components. So horizontal gap, vertical gap, and right flow direction, right and left, are 3 of the properties, and you can explore the other properties. There's also a T grid layout, and let's put that up here. And what a grid layout does, it says that everything that you put inside of it is going to have the same height and width. So if I put some buttons and I put an edit box and a list box, right? Usually you'd use this for button bars, for example, where you have a whole grid of buttons. And there's a couple of properties that you can play with grid layout. There's the items width and items height. So let's set this to 80. And let's set this to 80. And now again, we can change all the controls that are contained inside of the grid layout are associated with whatever the grid layout is, all the buttons and edit boxes and so on. All right. So layouts, grid layout and flow layout, anchors. Let's next look at actions and gestures. And what I did in this case is I took an existing C++ demo project that we shipped with XE2 and XE3 for 32-bit C++, and I augmented it. So let's open that one up. And what I did is I took the FireFlow example. Let's go here, here, and here. And okay, let's open up this one. So what FireFlow is a classic user interface metaphor used, for example, showing cover art. So if you search in Google search and in Wikipedia, you'll see cover flow. And cover flow is that thing that you see in iTunes and others where you put images of album covers. And as you're moving through the album covers, it flips them from one to another. So that was called the cover flow user interface model. And so in our sample, which is called FireFlow, it takes FireMonkey and it lets you load a group of pictures and then uses 3D animation inside of a viewport to do the cover flow. And cover flow is a layout 3D, and then some pictures based on selecting pictures from a directory will be created. T images will be created and parented to the layout 3D. And then as we move the trackbar, or as we use the arrows to move, or the mouse to click between pictures in the cover flow, then we get that user interface effect. So let's take a look at this, and we'll compile it. And then let's select pictures of where to find it. We have these pictures here, some nice flowers and other things. And so notice now it loads up into the cover flow, and it uses code to do animations to take the next picture, which is angled at about a 70-degree angle that's underneath. When we click on it, it brings it out and slides it into place, and it takes the picture that was there and it moves it to the left, angles it, and sticks it behind the current one. And we can skip around. We can go to the end, go to the beginning, and we can also use the track bar down here and just change the track bar to get to the next picture. Notice the animation happening, and it flips them as well. So this code it was there since XE2. And here, once I open the dialog, and if I don't hit cancel, if I hit OK, then it makes sure that the cover flow is empty. And then it goes through for all the files in the directory that I chose using the T directory class. It will set the parent for each cover to cover flow. That's its parent. And then it will fill and load the different pictures and position them properly. And that's how it's loaded to start. And then as we start, there's this method called set cover index where we can set to a specific image in the cover flow. And in there, when we choose that, it's going to move by doing an animation. It's going to move the current picture underneath, and then it's going to bring the picture that we want based on that index that's passed in, which is a number, an integer index into the number of pictures that we loaded from the dialog. And then it does this animation flow to move and animate by the x-axis, the y-axis, and the rotation angle to turn it at an angle. And that code's been there since, again, XE2. So in order to add actions and gestures to this example, I put down an action list. So this is a T action list component. There it is listed over here, the action list. And I added a gesture component using the T gesture manager. And I associated the gestures with the viewport. So in this area, which is for a 2D application, I can do 3D. So viewport 3D says within a 2D application, load things that will do 3D operations. And this viewport is a 3D view on top of a 2D application. So for that, I put the gesture manager and associated it with the viewport 3D. And then if I look at the standard gestures, I've associated and checked to say I want to process through the left and right gestures, and also the chevron left and chevron right. And I want them to fire the different actions that I generated. So right mouse click on T action list. I can bring up the action list editor. I can see current actions that I have. I can add actions, and I can delete actions. And I can also navigate to an action. So in my case, I created 4 actions: first action, last action, left action, and right action, and associate those with the 4 standard gestures I wanted. And then all I needed to do was work with the track bar. Since all this other code is associated with doing the operations themselves on the cover flow and the images, it has one event handler in particular called track bar change, which says whenever the track bar value changes to something, then call set cover index, taking the track bar value. So I could reuse something I already have, which is this event handler for track bar change, with my actions and gestures, just by saying, when I do first action, which is going to be that chevron left, set the track bar value to 0. Just setting that is going to fire this event handler up here on track bar change. It's call set cover index to do the right thing. Last action, which is the chevron right, I'm going to set the track bar value equal to cover flows children count -1. So we go from 0 to the number of images that are in the cover flow by getting the cover flow's children count. It's got whatever number it was, I forget, 6 or 7 images in this case. And then the left action, all I need to do is make sure that I'm not at the first image. If track bar value is greater than 0, then decrement the track bar value, which will drive, again, that event handler up here on track bar change to set cover index to whatever that new value is. And the same thing for the right action, which is going to be my right gesture. I want to see if I'm at the end. And so if the track bar value is less than the cover flow children count -1, then I could increment the track bar value and have it through the event handler up here again, call set cover index to the right value. Now, if I switch back, I'll just add a couple more gestures that I want to support, just to show that you can how I put the gestures there in the first place. So we'll go to the viewport 3D, go down to the gestures, and what I'm going to do is say I also want to support up and down gestures, and you have 2 choices in the object inspector for associating actions with gestures. You could also decide to just do on gesture, have a general event handler for all the gestures, and then dispatch based on gesture ID what you want your code to do, regardless of the gesture. So there's on gesture event handler. In this case, I want to associate actions with gestures. So I can right mouse click in the object inspector or click in it and say, create a new action, choose from some standard actions that are already built in, or choose a different already existing action. So in this case, when I do up, I want to go to the next action, which is the same as doing a right action. And for down, I want to associate the same as left. So I want to associate left action. So these actions are nice reusable sets of code in addition. So let's now run this application. And let's load the pictures. Right, and again, I can click on the mouse and go around. I can make a gesture. There's a left gesture. Now, to do a left gesture on Windows, I don't have a touch screen in the case of my MacBook Pro, so I'm using either of the mouse buttons held down and moving the mouse either to the right or the left. So you can use the left mouse button. I've never tried the center. Maybe it's not the center. I don't know how to use the center. So I'm doing that gesture. If I do a chevron, then it goes to the first. If I do chevron right, if I can do a chevron properly, it goes to the last. If I do up, down, well, up takes me to the next. So if I'm at the end, it doesn't do anything. And it doesn't change the trackbar value. So I'm doing a down gesture and it's moving to the previous one, an up gesture, right? Now this also works on Macintosh. So we can go and change the target platform to Macintosh OS X. And then I can build this, this application. Let's just make sure that I'm connected to the proper from my virtual machine. So let's see, sometimes the IP address of the host name changes. So let's go and, yep, it's not the right one. So I have to go over to, over here, not there. Let's go here and let's bring up this one and let's do a new window and let's just do if config. And my address over here now is 10.17. Yep, 10.17. So let's change the IDE to know about my machine. So we just go here and say 10.17 and test the connection. And now it succeeded because it can talk through. There's a default port 64211 to talk from the IDE to the Macintosh. So let's say OK. And now if I say compile and run, it'll finish compiling, and then it will actually deploy the application over if everything is good. And again, since it's the first time I built for Mac, it's doing that. Now it's going to create it, and it's going to link it and deploy it. So now it's deploying, going through the deploy phase, which will ship the application and anything else it needs to the Macintosh via that PA server or platform assistant server. And then the application will go up here somewhere, probably underneath, isn't it? Here it is. And we can call select and pick some pictures. Let's go to photos. There we are. And so once the photos are all loaded, I have 23 megabytes left. So let's go back. I forgot to hit. Oh, let's open the pictures. There they are. So I can use the mouse still. I can click. I can move the trackbar just like before. And now on Macintosh, there's a trackbar, but the trackpad on my MacBook Pro, single finger on the trackpad just moves the cursor around, right? 2 fingers to the left, to the right. Now you can't see this, but I'm moving. There's moving the mouse with 1 finger. 2 fingers makes a gesture. So there's right, left, up, down, chevron, and so on. So you can set if you want the trackpad, or if you have an external trackpad or one of those mice that acts as a trackpad. I just have a regular Windows mouse, and I have my trackpad that's built into the MacBook Pro. You can set that in system preferences what the touch whether you have touch enablement, it's on by default, and what you want some of the standard gestures to be. So again, it works on Windows and it works on Macintosh in C++. Sorry, that heading should be for the form should be C++ Builder, because that's what it's powered by. I copied the project over when I did it. So let's fix that, and I'll check it back into the version repository for the demo, and also make sure that that gets out for you all to have. So there we go, and that's that example using just how to take an existing FireMonkey application that supports doing things like actions and adding actions and gestures to it. So pretty straightforward. In this case, just reusing code that already exists and the design of the application, how it already existed, to write just a couple lines of code to do the gesture and action management. You know, what was that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines of code. Again, because the rest of the application was ready and designed very nicely. So the next thing I want to show you is how to support devices and also sensors. And then I'll switch over to machine over on the Samsung slate to show where there's more devices and sensors. But before I do that, I forgot one example I wanted to show, and that's using custom styles. So here we'll right mouse click, and one of the things that's new inside of FireMonkey 2 and XE3 is support for additional styles, bitmap styles in this case. So we can go to users, public documents, Rad Studio 10.0 styles, and I've got a couple styles. There's one that comes with FireMonkey. It's called transparent style. And so if we apply and close that, here's this beautiful transparent style, which sometimes people call it the Tron style, I think, Anders. It's sort of this Tron look where, you know, you can see through it when you're doing things. This list box, you can sort of see the bleed through of the underneath. And so if you like that style, maybe you'd be on some transparent display and you'd like to be able to look behind it and see things behind it, for example. There's another style that's available, and that comes as part of a bonus pack when you use XE3, when you have XE3, and that's called the jet style. And so there's two parts of the jet style. There's for Windows, there's just jet.style, and for Macintosh, there's jet.style. And for the Macintosh Retina display, you'll see styles having jet and then 2 and a little X. So that's just to let you know this is a double style or high-res style. And so, for example, if I was on the Macintosh, I would choose that one. Otherwise, I could choose the jet style for Mac, and I could load each of those. And here's the jet style for Windows. So let's apply that one. And here's its look. Look at this nice little effect here. And so here's the different controls. Notice also that the non-client area, the border, the caption, the title, the minimize, maximize, and close buttons are all different. And you have this kind of special glow transparent effect that's available. This is the jet style. When you have XE3, you can go to the registered user download area, and you will be able to download the jet style, which gives you the Windows and Mac styles, and the Retina style, the Jet 2X style. And so we can close that application using the custom painting for the close button. All right, so let's do this. Let's close. And now I want to open up this device and sensor. Let's see, I think it's this one. But let's just make sure I get the C++ version, because I have a Delphi version as well. Let's go to desktop, C++ Builder, demos, devices and sensors. Here it is. All right. So this is a C++ example, very simple. It's got a button, it's got a label, it's got 2 buttons, 2 labels, and 2 memos. And underneath, I do a couple things. In order to get from FireMonkey and get the devices, I want to include the media header file. The media header file defines interfaces that I can use, in particular the TCapture device manager, and also functionality that's associated with it. And system.sensors.hpp I'm using down here to get to this T-sensor manager. So whenever you see units that have system dot in front of it, then that's platform agnostic. That means that you can use those interfaces in those libraries in both VCL and FireMonkey applications. If you see something with FMX or VCL in front of it, then it's platforms, it's framework specific. So this is the FMX media HPP interface file, which allows us to look at the different capture devices that are associated. All right. And so on the code behind, let me scroll over. I say, okay, let's get the number of devices. So the way I do that is I go to the capture device manager, and I use the current device manager, because you could install your own device managers, and I get the count of the number of devices that it finds, if there are any. And then I simply iterate through the number of devices and use the device manager to get the name through the devices array. I get the name of each device that's found. And the same thing for sensors. I set the DT set. First, I have to activate the sensor manager. So I'll set its active property to true. Once I do that, then I have access to the sensor manager, and I can get the current count of the number of sensors. And then I can go through the sensor manager and the sensors array for those that are found, and I can get the names of them. All right. And this works on Windows and Macintosh. And then I'll switch over to the Samsung Slate so we can see something that has more devices. In this case, in my VM, I only have mapped through the microphone. And over here, and on Windows, I'm using GeoSense for Windows, which is a free download 32-bit and 64-bit sensor driver that uses Wi-Fi and TCP/IP to find an approximate location. Since my MacBook Pro on Windows doesn't have a GPS device. Let's go and run this on Macintosh as well. So let's set the target platform to Macintosh, and this also works on 64-bit. And let's make sure now that profile should be set properly. Let's test it. Yep, it's still okay. So I can go in and run this example on Macintosh. And so it'll compile it, link it, and deploy it over to the Macintosh site and start it up again, going through the platform assistant server. And when it's done, then we can switch over. And now we've got our Macintosh version. So if I get devices, it turns out that on my Macintosh, I have several devices. I have the line input. I have the built-in microphone that's built in. I've installed Soundflower, which lets me associate audio with other applications. And I've got the built-in camera. So the built-in iSight camera, which I didn't map through VMware over to the Windows side. So that's available. And for sensors, I have, didn't give me a name, but it's the name is the location sensor, which also Macintosh provides. Let's make sure I did that right. I think so. Let's see. Yep, that should be okay. All right. So then that's sensor management, and there's lots of things you can do, as Darren talked about in his sessions. You've got support for whatever kinds of devices get installed, and device drivers that get installed, whether you've got temperature sensors, external, usually in Windows and some of the PCs, in Macintosh, it's devices that might get plugged in through USB, but announce themselves through device drivers, so they show up through the APIs. And you go to the Windows on Windows, you can go to the Windows 7 and Windows 8 sensor APIs to get the whole range of device types that are available. There's RFID, there's for GPS, there's a GPS device, there's dead reckoning, triangulation, there's environmental sensors like pressure, temperature, wind speed, things you might have a weather station plugged in through USB port, for example, would have a driver that would expose a bunch of these sensors. And the two that are available in FireMonkey out of the box are listed down here. The location sensor that Darren showed earlier, that works on Windows and Macintosh, and motion sensor for Windows. And it also tells you what they're supported on, so you can see as you hover over them which platforms that they work and are supported for. Now, let me switch, and Andrews, Give me a quick moment. I got to switch over to my Samsung Slate. So, okay. And then we'll go look at questions. So let me find, oh, here it is. I've got to change presenter to the other David I, which is this one, and show my screen. And then I'll move this all back over here and get that out of the way. So is that showing up again, the slate?
I believe it is. Yeah,
Okay.
you got a Red Studio XE3. Yep.
Okay, great. So what I'm going to do is open up that same devices and sensors application, and it's got the same code behind that's going to go and show me all the devices and all the sensors. And let's run this example. So in this case, on the Samsung Slate, which is running Windows 8 Professional, it has two cameras. It has a forward-facing and a backward-facing camera. So there's the two webcams. It's got a microphone and a line. It's got two microphones. Well, actually, one of them is USB audio, which comes as part of the docking station. And for sensors, it has several sensors. It's got device orientation. So if I switch my orientation, it should flip. Now it's flipped. I don't know how that shows up on GoToWebinar. Did it flip? I guess it did as I'm moving it. Does it? Yeah, it flips back probably. Except GoToWebinar doesn't know, so it puts that there. It's got the 3-axis accelerometer, and the reason there isn't a 6-axis accelerometer right now, like angular acceleration and motion speed, is that Samsung so far has only delivered, at least we checked a few weeks ago, or maybe in November, they haven't shipped a Windows 8 6-axis accelerometer yet. And I've got an ambient light sensor, since this is a tablet or slate device. If I take it outside, you want to be able to control the way you display and how bright you display or not things. So there's an ambient light. And sometimes there's a location sensor shows up, because I've also installed GeoSense for Windows. But that's just a look at C++ and FireMonkey 2 and Metropolis, and getting at devices and sensors in code. And you can, again, do all sorts of things here in sensor management. Let me see if I can open up, let's open this file. So this is the implementation of media support. It's written in Delphi for FireMonkey, but under the covers, we generate the header file for you for all of that. And the same thing goes for the sensors. We can open those as well. And so in that case, you have things like sensors. You've got orientation sensor type, and these are all the different types that come from the API. So for example, location sensor type, you have GPS, static, you have lookup, you have triangulation, broadcast, dead reckoning, some other. For environmental sensor, you have temperature, atmospheric pressure, humidity, wind speed, wind direction. So I guess I'm going to have to get a computerized weather station that I can plug into my device. Electrical sensor, if you have something like that, then you'd get voltage, current, capacitance, resistance, inductance, electrical power, potentiometer. And mechanical sensor, some kind of switches, a multi-value switch, looks like pressure, strain, gauge kinds of devices. Maybe you're doing some machine automation. Biometric, human presence, I'd like that one so you can't sneak up on me. Human proximity, even better for like a robotic system that might be an automatic defense mechanism against somebody coming close to you. And light sensor, that's the ambient light. Here's the RFID and a barcode reader. So all of those are just wrappers for the Windows API and sensors that are available through those APIs and devices that you might hook in. You can take control of all of that. So Anders, I will let's see. I guess I can switch back to my Macintosh and just have that. Let's go take control of it. Let's go change presenter back to the other me, and let's show my screen. Okay, let's get that back there, and let's just bring back up Chrome for things. So Anders, maybe you have or I can look at the question log if there are any questions.
No, there are lots of questions.
Oh, no. I've been up very early. Okay, go ahead.
Oh,
Some I might defer till Wednesday when the R&D team members are here for a session, but go ahead.
All right. So first question is, what happened to Bruno's session? That's been moved to Wednesday
At 9 a.m.
At 9 a.m., the fourth session on Wednesday.
Sorry, it needed to be moved, and we only found out about it this morning. Sorry, everyone.
Yep. Is a PA server going to be required for the foreseeable future, or do you plan to integrate the functionality into the core product in the near future?
PA server is going to always be required for other platforms that you want to talk to, whether it's in the case of if you've got a Windows server that you want to talk to, you want to deploy and debug, because the PA server not only does deployment and other things, but it also helps facilitate remote debugging.
Yeah, remember in this case, it may look like we're running on the same machine, but we've actually, there are different VMs here. So in the Windows VM, we have Rad Studio XE3 installed. But then on the Mac, which doesn't know anything about Rad Studio, we have PS Server installed. So that's the only piece that you need to install on the target platform where you want to debug on, whether it's a Mac or a 32-bit or 64-bit Windows machine. And
it also facilitates, because I have the Mac target here in the ID, I chose project deployment. There might be some other files, like there's some dilibs that need to go over, some icons that need to go over. You might have an XML file or something else that might need to be sent. If you're using client dataset, you need the Midas dilib sent over. If you have a client application, a Mac client talking to a DataSnap server. So you can use this button on the deployment page to choose any what we call feature files, like there's Midas, DB Express drivers, client drivers that you need for DB Express to be sent over. You can also click on this button and add any other files that you might need to send over, maybe an INI file, something like that, or some other icons, a style file, for example.
Okay. I'm a visually impaired programmer, and I love C and C++. I've always been a fan of the Borland C++ IDEs since my university days. Let's see. My question is, can Embarcadero make C++ Builder XE3 Professional available to the visually impaired low-income user the same way the academic version is available for a university student? And is it compatible with Zoom text with screen reader 9, 10, and higher? It'd be great if you could. Love to talk with Mr. Strupp.
So there's two things as it relates to site and accessibility. The IDE should work okay. I'll double check about the one you talked about. We've tested with JAWS. The VCL is also site enabled, and we worked with several site impaired developers over the years to make sure that's okay. FireMonkey in your applications isn't site accessible yet. We're working with TMS software to site enable the use of FireMonkey user interface components in the user interface of your applications. As far as products and pricing, I'll pass the feedback on to product management. We do have the starter edition for C++, which is 32-bit Windows, has VCL and FireMonkey. That's very low cost. And you can upgrade. There's an upgrade price that if you basically have any developer tool, you get the upgrade price, which is something like less than $150, I think, US. So there's the starter edition, which includes, and there's one for XE3 starter edition. It doesn't have the 64-bit compiler, but it has 32-bit compiler for Windows with full FireMonkey 2 and VCL. So check out C++ Builder starter edition. Or, yeah, take a class and get the academic pricing.
Are there any good documents showing how to implement the DataSnap mobile connector generator for an unsupported language?
Ooh, we don't have a document for an unsupported language, but you can look at all the videos and articles and in the doc wiki that talks about Mobile Studio. So, shoot, I have to go up to DataSnap or down here somewhere. Maybe it is. Here I'm scrolling around mindlessly because of lack of sleep. DataSnap. Let's see, DataSnap related. There's mobile connectors because they've been enhanced for latest versions. So if you go to docwiki.embarcadero.com/radstudio XE3EN or whatever your language is, German, whatever. I think we have German, French, Japanese, English.
Yeah.
In a lot of cases. DataSnap connector mobiles. So these are the ones we support, and we have examples And we have videos from CodeRage 6, for example, where Matt DeLong did the mobile connectors talks, and those are recordings are there.
Well, to answer the question, I don't believe we have any documentation whatsoever on how to create your own DataSnet mobile connector for choose your favorite unsupported language. Yeah, I don't believe we do.
Other than it's supported through the tproxy writer.
Yeah, and you may be able to glean from the different implementations of, for Android, BlackBerry, Windows Phone, and iOS, Objective-C version 4 or 5, and generate your own.
But I'll look for that question and your email address in the registration log. Again, it's done through tproxy writer, and that's extensible, where you could create your own custom proxy writer for a language and then hook it in. But yeah, we haven't documented that. You can look at the source code for the implementation of the other mobile connectors and the proxy writers for C#, Objective-C, JavaScript, Java, and so on. All that code is there. Yeah. And so you can see how those are generated and then do a Python or Perl or I don't know what, Ruby, whatever the language might be.
Okay. Ahmed is repeating a question that we had, I think, during the one of JT's sessions. This could probably be a QC bug report or maybe better answered on the forums because I don't believe we can answer it. When I use a custom FireMonkey control and I say tstyle manager : load from resource in a thread and then close the app, the task manager process list still has my process, but the app is closed. So again, you may have to ask that on the forums, forums.embarcadero.com, or simply log as a bug report.
Yeah, in QC. And, you know, Ahmed, you can come back on Wednesday. We've got 3 sessions with members of the R&D team.
True.
And JT is going to be sitting in, and other members of the R&D team for C++ will be on those sessions with Bruno at 9 a.m. And there's 2 other sessions on Wednesday that are conversations with the C++ Builder R&D team.
Okay.
Sounds like a bug to me.
Could be. Are you going to support Windows Phone 8 and iOS 6 soon?
So iOS 6, we're going to get that support with the Mobile Studio. I believe that when we shipped what we shipped today with DataSnap and all, iOS 6 wasn't out yet. It had been announced in the summer, and we had locked down the release of XE3. But you know, we're constantly updating. We'll be doing updates. So we're working on the Mobile Studio, which is talked about in Red Studio Mobile Roadmap. And Anders has been playing with some of the field tests. If you have XE3, contact your local sales office or send us an email, and we'll get you. XE3 gets you on the early access for field tests for Mobile Studio, and you can start doing cool things like iOS support and device support in the tests. Okay. What do you do about the PA server with iOS?
You install it on the Mac.
Install on the Mac, okay.
Yeah, and the Mac takes care of deploying it, code signing, and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, that's why I have.
So it's completely seamless.
That's why I have this thing over here. Oh, sorry. Okay.
Yep, there you go. How can you delete a style from a stylebook inside of RAD XE3?
Stylebook is an object. So if you're in C++, you can call the destructor. In Delphi, you can call free, or stylebook is just an object.
You're talking about removing a particular style item in the
whole style,
or the whole style. Maybe you want to.
Style item might also be an object, and if it is, you could destroy it, free it, clear it, kill it.
Yeah, if it's in the style editor, I think you can select it and just hit the delete key, or right-click and delete.
But they're all the style, the things. It's all just objects. So everything you can do with other objects, if it's got methods for deleting, freeing, destroying, you can do it in code, as well as loading styles from an external file, or loading them from an internal in your app, setting them from internal in your application. And thank you all very much for letting me do this session. And again, Bruno's session is Wednesday, 9 a.m.